It is time. We are back with another UFC tier list, guys. We have not done one of these in a while now. We're going to be looking at different UFC fighters and establishing whether or not they are overrated, properly rated, or underrated, guys. Let's go ahead and get into it, guys. We have about 20 plus, around 20 UFC fighters we're going to look at. Without further ado, let's go ahead and start off with the cover athlete himself, Derrick Lewis. Now, everybody knows about Derrick Lewis. He's a knockout threat. And that's pretty much it, right? I'm going to say wrong. I'm going to say nowadays Derrick Lewis has become sort of, slightly, very, very slightly underrated. Now, I feel like y'all are going to think he's properly rated, but this is why I think he's underrated. Obviously, Derrick Lewis does not have great losses on the resume. However, I think the heavyweight division has come to a point where unless you're super technical or very, very skilled on the ground, you're probably not beating Derrick Lewis, man. Ask Francis Ngannou. Ask Talashin Teixeira, man, however you say his name. Derrick Lewis just got a knockout victory, a first-round knockout against Teixeira, which doesn't sound like a great win right now, but he was the underdog. Teixeira was coming off multiple first-round finishes, right? But here's the thing with Derrick Lewis. Does he beat Tom Aspinall? No, probably not, unless he can fluke a KO. But that's the thing with Derrick Lewis. The reason I say he's underrated is because he always has that chance to pull off a fluke knockout victory. He has crazy power, some of the best power we've ever seen, and he continues to rack up wins in the division. He continues to rack up knockout victories. And he's got some good wins on the resume, like we talked about Francis Ngannou. Didn't knock him out, but he beat him. He's beat Curtis Blades. He's knocked out Alexander Volkov. Those are good wins in the heavyweight division. But yes, at this point, I do think that Derrick Lewis is slightly underrated. Does he have another title run in him? Maybe. Honestly, I think Derrick Lewis might be one win away from challenging Tom Aspinall for the belt, guys. If I sound sick, guys, I'm sorry. We're battling with some, allergies and stuff going around. But moving on to his boy, Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland. The thing about Kevin Holland is I feel like he's overrated, but also underrated at the same time, if that makes sense. If y'all know what I'm saying, I feel like y'all do know exactly what I'm saying. I'm going to say properly rated because Kevin Holland will have some great performances, and then he'll go on to lose to Daniel Rodriguez. So there's that, okay? Kevin Holland, he seems like the type that should be underrated. If he locked in, you would think he has a title run in him. We've seen him, rack up 5 wins in a calendar year. We've seen how Kevin Holland can be good, but he cannot be great. We've seen how Kevin Holland can be good, but we've also seen how Kevin Holland can be bad. So Kevin Holland, I'm going to have to say, is properly rated. He's shown flashes of greatness. He's shown flashes of stupidity. Okay, so Kevin Holland, he's a good fighter, a good win on the resume. But at the same time, I'm going to go properly rated. Moving on to Umar Nurmagomedov. This one's interesting because I feel like his fan base might overrate him, but to the general consensus, the UFC casual fan base, I think Umar Nurmagomedov has slightly been underrated. This is following the Merab Dvalishvili loss. But here's the thing. Yes, he did lose to Merab. I've rewatched that fight, I think, 3 times. Very, very, very competitive, very close fight. Umar won the first 2 rounds. Merab stole the last 3. I'm saying Umar is underrated because people are acting like Merab just dog-walked Umar. What fight were y'all watching? Of course, Merab, like he does, took over late in the fight. But there were still some very competitive rounds like round 4. Round 5 was super competitive until Merab started emoting, until he hit him with a good right hand. But Umar, I think he is getting underrated because I don't know if I have the balls to say that he beats Merab in a rematch right now, but I think they will rematch down the line, and I do think Umar will eventually claim that title. I think he's slightly been underrated because he did not get destroyed by Merab. Very competitive fight, and there's also an argument that if he did not break his hand, he would have won the fight. So, for that reason, I'm going to say Umar is underrated. Let's not forget he just dominated. Didn't necessarily dominate Corey Sandhagen, but he clearly beat. He was clearly 1 or 2 steps ahead of Sandhagen in the entire fight. So let's not forget about that win. And Sandhagen is also a fighter who's now fighting for the title. Let's not forget about that. Umar is slightly underrated. Moving on to Arman Tsarukyan. Arman Tsarukyan. This is a tough one as well. I think Arman Tsarukyan has a decent chance to beat Ilia Topuria. Does he beat Topuria? I used to say yes, but now I'm going to say no. However, where do I put Arman Tsarukyan? He has a great win over Charles. He's somewhere between. I'm debating between properly rated and underrated. He's not overrated. I would not say that. I'm going to go with properly rated. We're going to go with properly rated for Arman Tsarukyan. Does he have the tools to beat Ilia Topuria? I would argue yes, but at the same time, you know what? Actually, I'm changing that. I'm changing that to underrated. Arman Tsarukyan is going to be underrated. I think he is the best grappler in the lightweight division. Yeah, he's the best grappler at 155 since Islam is not there no more. And dude, Arman Tsarukyan, I think he would out-grapple Ilia. I think if they were to match up, he would get the fight to the ground eventually. If Ilia stuffed a takedown or two, I think Arman would not be content hanging out in the pockets, trying to strike with Ilia. He would be relentless, trying to take the fight to the ground. I think he has a decent chance. When I say decent chance, I mean 45% chance to defeat Ilia Topuria. That is a fight I want to see down the line. I think Arman Tsarukyan is slightly underrated. I think people are kind of what was that? That was not even English. I think people are starting to come around to the fact that Arman Tsarukyan is very, very good. Let's go ahead and move on to his boy, Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev is properly rated. Obviously, there's going to be people that underrate him. There's going to be people that overrate him. The consensus, I'm going to say he's properly rated. People are saying that he does not get beat by anybody in his division. I'm one of those people, and that is fact, okay? There's also people saying that he's the greatest fighter of all time. Yes, I have heard that. But there's also people saying that Khamzat Chimaev is not dangerous. He just hugs on people. That's not true. Khamzat Chimaev is one of the most talented UFC fighters we have ever seen. I'm going to say that he's properly rated. Moving on to my boy, my cousin, my flesh and blood cousin Gamrot. Y'all know exactly where he's going. Y'all know exactly where he's going. Cousin Gamrot is the man to dethrone Ilia Topuria. Cousin Gamrot's the man to dethrone Tom Aspinall, guys. If he wanted to, he could. And that's facts. Y'all know that it's facts. Cousin Gamrot, let's not forget, he has a win over this man right here, Arman Tsarukyan, who's also underrated, who's also the number one contender if you don't count Islam Makhachev. Cousin Gamrot beat Dan Hooker. He should be fighting a top 5 matchup, maybe even fighting for a number one contender fight. But the UFC does not like him. He's not boring. He has a great style that is very entertaining if people can grapple with him. Look, Arman Tsarukyan versus Cousin Gamrot was one of the most entertaining fights of the year. I think Cousin Gamrot is underrated. Moving on to Khalil Roundtree, a.k.a. Jiri Prochazka's next victim, guys. Yes, Khalil Roundtree, although he's good, although he's coming off a win over Jamahal Hill, who's a former champion, by the way, Khalil Roundtree is slightly overrated. I'm not sitting here saying he's buns. Just because I say a fighter is overrated does not mean I think they're trash, okay? I want y'all to get that through your mind, okay? Khalil Roundtree is a great fighter, one of the best fighters in the division. However, he has been overrated following the loss to Alex Pereira. I've never seen somebody's stock rise so much after getting beat and finished by the champion, but credit to him, he put up a great fight. Khalil Roundtree, he's good enough to beat a Jamahal Hill. He's good enough to enter the top 5, potentially, but he's not good enough to beat anybody in the top 5. I don't think he beats Jiri Prochazka. I don't think he would beat, might be a hot take, I don't know if he beats Jan Blachowicz even at his old age. Yes, Jan Blachowicz is on his deathbed. I don't know if Khalil Roundtree beats even that version of Blachowicz. He does not beat Magomed Ankalaev. He does not beat Pereira. And he does not beat Carlos Ulberg. I'm sorry, Khalil Roundtree is overrated. Moving on to Paddy Pimblett. Oh, this is a tough one. This is a very, very interesting one because some people, there's some fighters that people overrate, but people also underrate. So, I'm going to say Paddy's underrated, man. I know the underrated category is getting stacked, but I'm going to say that Paddy Pimblett is kind of underrated. It's hard to tell with him because, he's been underrated his whole career, and he continues to find success. outside of the Jared Gordon performance, Paddy Pimblett has been picked against. People say that so whoever he's fighting is going to beat him, and he aces the test. He finishes these guys. Now, here's the problem that I have. You look at his last two fights, it's against Bobby Green and Michael Chandler, fighters who have not got a win in some time now. But Paddy Pimblett has looked elite. He's looked phenomenal in both of those showings. Paddy Pimblett is a great grappler. He's an elite grappler in this division. Does he beat Ilia Topuria? No chance. But I think people should give Paddy a little bit more credit than he's been receiving. I'll say that. He does beat Justin Gaethje. I want to throw that out there as well. You know what? While we're talking of Justin Gaethje, let's go ahead and throw him in the overrated tier. Justin Gaethje. I love Justin Gaethje, man. I saw him live in person, my first UFC event. I love Justin Gaethje. This is no hate to him. Obviously, he's a great fighter. He's been a great fighter for forever. However, Justin Gaethje has been overrated for his entire career. That is my take on it. Justin Gaethje, he's a good striker. I would not call him an elite striker. We'll say he's a great striker. He's not elite. He has never outstruck an elite striker. He's outstruck Rafael Fiziev. Are we calling Rafael Fiziev an elite striker? I don't think so. This man's arguing for a title shot. And you look at his last couple fights, right? His most recent fight, he beat Rafael Fiziev, who was ranked number 11, coming off an injury on short notice. Cool, he got the job done. It was a very close fight, by the way. Let's not forget that. Before that, he got dominated by Max Holloway. Okay, yeah, he didn't just get knocked out. It wasn't a come from behind KO from Max. Max dominated him and then KO'd him. Before that, what happened? Justin Gaethje knocked out Dustin Poirier. Great win. Dustin Poirier is also a fighter who is no longer in the UFC. So there's that. Again, not taking anything away from the Dustin Poirier win. That's a great win, obviously, but Dustin Poirier is not in the UFC. Prior to that, who did he beat? He beat Rafael Fiziev again. So he's got 3 wins. He's 3-1 in his last 4. If we go back even further, he has a loss right before the Rafael Fiziev win, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but if I rarely am, okay? Gaethje's 3-1 in his last 4 fights. 2 of those wins being against the same fighter in Rafael Fiziev, and the other one being against Dustin Poirier, who is now an ESPN UFC analyst. Okay? Justin Gaethje's overrated. He's still great. He doesn't beat Paddy Pimblett. He doesn't beat Charles in a rematch. He doesn't beat Islam. He doesn't beat Ilia. He doesn't beat Max, obviously. Does he beat Dan Hooker? I think he does, but it still would be competitive. Let's go ahead and move on to Charles Oliveira. Speaking of the devil, or should I say, speaking of the angel, because I don't want to call Charles a devil, but Charles Oliveira, at this point in his career, guys, this is all of these fighters right now today. Where does Charles Oliveira rank? I'm going to say underrated, bro. I know we're filling up this underrated tier, but why are people picking Rafael Fiziev to beat Charles Oliveira? I think the matchup is horrendous. I don't know why they're making that fight. I don't know why Charles wants to come back and fight so quickly, but he's not losing to Rafael Fiziev. I don't know what to tell you, okay? Unless his chin is just completely gone, then we'll have discussions about that and retirement. He probably will retire if he gets knocked out again, but Charles Oliveira is still an elite grappler. He's still an elite fighter. Don't let it fool you. Just because he got knocked out by Ilia Topuria, who's one of the best fighters we've ever seen ever, does not mean he's trash, bro, okay? Charlie Olives is underrated. Moving on. Lerone Murphy. Now, Lerone Murphy was underrated going into the Aaron Pico fight because he was the underdog, being undefeated in the UFC. Does Lerone beat Volk, bro? I don't even want to talk about that. I don't care to see that fight, honestly. Personally, I don't. Where do I put Lerone? Lerone's underrated too, bro. I think Lerone is slightly underrated, man. Yes, he's a Leon Edwards maxer, but he's a little bit more exciting than Leon Edwards, okay? He just came off a spinning elbow KO against Pico. Let's not act like Pico was not beating him. And you know what? We're going to put Lerone at properly rated. We're going to put Lerone at properly rated. I would say he's underrated prior to the Pico fight. Now people are kind of starting to glaze him and saying he's the next champion. So I think it kind of evens out. We're going to go properly rated. He's a great fighter. He's got wins over Josh Emmett, Dan Ige, Aaron Pico. Now that I'm naming out these wins, they're not the best of wins. They are good wins, I will say, but they're not the best of wins, okay? He does need a win over an actual top contender that's in their prime, okay? Moving on to Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's undefeated. He's finished everybody in his path except for Ian Gary. Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm sorry, but he's overrated. Again, this does not mean he's trash. Obviously, Shavkat is a great fighter, one of the best fighters in that division. But people were talking about this man as if he beats prime John Jones. Let's not forget the TikTok edits of Shavkat until people finally came around and realized that this man's injury prone and he fights every year and a half. Now you don't hear the Shavkat hype train as much. Shavkat. Maybe a hot take. I don't think he's a future champion. I think the welterweight division is too stacked at the top. Does Shavkat beat Jack Della Maddalena? I don't think so. If you would have asked me that a year ago, I would have said yes. Does Shavkat beat Bilal Muhammad? I don't know. I don't think so. Does Shavkat beat who else is at the top? Sean Brady. I don't think so, man. Okay. Outside of that, I think Shavkat probably beats everybody else in the division. I think he does have a tough matchup with Kamaru Usman. But I don't know if Shavkat beats the top three contenders, man. For that reason, I'm going to say overrated because people act like Shavkat's going to run through and finish every single contender in the welterweight division, including the welterweight champion. So I'm going to say slightly overrated. He's great. Don't get me wrong. He's phenomenal. Moving on to Sean Strickland. Yes, guys, we're living in a world where a former champion, Sean Strickland, who, yes, was a former champion, he's underrated, bro. I'm sorry to tell you, he's underrated. Look at Sean Strickland's resume. He's got a win over Izzy. Yes, he lost to Dricus du Plessis twice, but we know Dricus du Plessis is phenomenal. You know, he can beat everybody except for Khamzat Chimaev. Nobody beats Khamzat Chimaev, as we already talked about. But if you look at Strickland's resume prior to that, he has a win over who? Nasruddin Imavov, who looks unbeatable right now. He looks lightning fast on the feet. Strickland is such a phenomenal, I'll say anti-striker that it's so hard to find success against Strickland on the feet. And you have to take him down, but he has elite takedown defense. So he's such a tricky matchup for anybody. Yes, Sean Strickland, I don't think he's going to win the belt. I don't think he beats Chimaev, but he is underrated, all right? Moving on. Another former champion in Jamahal Hill. Jamahal Hill is underrated. I'm playing, guys. Jamahal Hill is going to go properly rated because everybody has said that he's overrated to the point where now everybody thinks he sucks. And he's still a former champion. He has not looked great in his last couple fights. Maybe he just has not come back the same from injury, or maybe he just was never who he thought that he was. You know, he beat an old Glover Teixeira in weird circumstances to win the belt. Let's not forget Magomed Ankalaev should have been the champion anyway, but they had a draw. Jamahal Hill was a fluke champion, guys. He's got some good wins on the resume, but he's not surviving in today's light heavyweight. I don't know if it's because of the injury. He doesn't even seem to be in tip-top shape. He doesn't look the part, at least, but I don't know what to say with Jamahal Hill, bro. Like, I thought he was underrated, but then watching him against Khalil Roundtree, he just did not look good, bro. He did not look good. He had his moments against Jiri, but against Roundtree, bro, he looked flat. I'm going to say properly rated, not even overrated at this point. He's just properly rated. Everybody knows where he's at. And I don't know if I'm picking Jamahal Hill to win another fight. But let's go ahead and move on to Long John Silva. I hate to do it, man. I hate to do it. But he's also underrated. Long John Silva is the best fighting nerd. And I don't even think it's close. John Silva is one of the most underrated strikers in the UFC. He also has crazy power. And here's the sad news, guys. If John Silva were to fight Volkanovski, let me breathe before I say this. I think he would knock him out. I hate to say that. I hate to say that about my sweet Pookie princess, Alexander Volkanovski, but I think that's the case, bro. I think that is the case. The world we're living in, Volkanovski's chinny. I still think Volkanovski's more skilled than Silva, but Silva's underrated, bro. He's the best fighting nerd. I think he's a future champion. I don't see Diego Lopez beating this man. He's going to beat Diego. He's going to fight for the belt in his next fight, and he's probably going to win the belt, bro. Let's move on, bro. It's getting me sad. Moving on to Payton Talbott. I should have evened this out, bro. We should have evened this out because Payton Talbott is also underrated. He's also underrated. Okay, we saw this. In his last fight, he looked phenomenal. This is the thing about Payton Talbott. Payton Talbott was super hyped up coming into the UFC. He was streaking. He was beating everybody until he ran into, what's his name? Barcelos. Till he ran into Barcelos, who derailed the hype train. So it got to a point where Talbott was overrated to severely underrated because nobody was picking Talbott. I don't want y'all to forget. Nobody was picking Payton Talbott to defeat Felipe Lima. And what did Talbot do? Except for me, guys. Y'all know I picked Pride Month Talbot. How could I go against Talbot in the month of June? Come on, bro. But anyway, Payton Talbot looked phenomenal. He showcased improvements. His takedown defense looked great. He was able to get up to his feet. The striking looked great. The pressure was phenomenal. The hype train, I don't know where it's at, but it should continue. They should pick it back up because Payton Talbot looks phenomenal and he's underrated. Moving on to Rainer the Riddler. What do I do with the Riddler, bro? He's not overrated, man. He's not overrated. He's either properly rated or underrated. Again, if y'all disagree with me, go ahead and feel free to do so in the comments. Just know how it works around here. I'm always right. You're always wrong. That's just how it is. But, the Riddler. Is he properly rated or underrated, bro? I feel like, honestly, I think Rainer the Riddler is the hardest stylistic matchup for Khamzat Chimaev. He had a tough fight with, I'm going to say properly rated. I don't think anybody's saying he's a future champion, and they shouldn't be, but nobody's over the moon about Rainer the Riddler. Nobody also thinks he sucks. So the Riddler, he's beat Bo Nickel, which has not, on paper doesn't look like a great win, but it was a hard stylistic matchup. The Riddler looked great. He looked great against Robert Whittaker. He got knocked out. I thought he got knocked out against Whittaker, but somehow didn't. Somehow regained consciousness and came back and won the fight. It was a close fight. I do think the Riddler won. I'm going to say he's properly rated. I think he is the hardest stylistic matchup for Chimaev. However, I don't know if he gets through Anthony Hernandez. I'm going to go properly rated. Moving on to Kendrick Lamar. He's overrated, bro. The thing about Manel Kape, I've always been a Manel Kape hater, but he is very good. I was going to pick Brandon Royval to beat Manel Kape, and Manel Kape was a massive favorite going into that fight. Manel Kape, very fast, great striker. I'm a little suspect of the takedown defense, though. If y'all remember the Muhammad Mokaev fight, also, Mokaev should be re-signed to the UFC. He's honestly the hardest matchup for Pantoja out of anybody out there. But Manel Kape couldn't stuff the takedowns. That was a boring fight, by the way. Manel Kape, he's lightning fast. He's got power for the flyweight division. Great striker. I just don't think he's as good as people make him out to be. People say he's a future champion. He can't stay healthy. He pulls out of fights. Maybe I'm just hating. At this point. Maybe I'm saying he's underhated, but Manel Kape, great fighter. I don't think he beats Pantoja. Oh, Manel Kape versus Kai France would be a great fight. I think Kai France takes that one. I think Brandon Royval beats him. I think Brandon Moreno beats him. So I think he's about a top 5 contender. I'm not buying into the title run, bro. Moving on to Dan Ige. Dan 50K Ige is overrated at this point, bro. Yes, he stepped in to fight Diego Lopez on very, very short notice, like 6 hours notice. That was cool and all. Dan Ige's not that good, bro. He's not that good. Is he really a notable name to add on to your resume nowadays? I'm going to say no. I understand he put up a great fight against Diego. But here's the thing that UFC fans don't understand. When you're fighting somebody on short notice, obviously it puts them at a disadvantage, especially when they're not in camp. But at the same time, Diego Lopez was put at a disadvantage as well because he was preparing this whole time for a style in Brian Ortega. And then that gets flipped completely. You're fighting a completely different style, completely different style in Dan Ige, who hits like a truck. Okay, so people don't give Diego enough credit for that. Either way, he still should have finished him, even though Dan Ige is unfinishable. He's just not that good, okay? Dan Ige, it's a decent name on the resume. I'm not jumping out of my seat if you beat Dan Ige, okay? Patricio Pitbull just beat Dan Ige. Moving on to Bryce Mitchell, kind of the same boat here. I think Bryce Mitchell's better than Dan Ige, though. I think a Bryce Mitchell win is better than Dan Ige. I also think he's overrated. I'm going to go overrated for Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell. Great win over Saeed Nurmagomedov. I'm worried about Bryce Mitchell on the feet, bro. He has nothing to offer. I understand he had success against Barboza. But Bryce Mitchell, moving down to featherweight, maybe it's a good move. I don't see him beating any of the top, moving down to bantamweight. I don't see him beating any of the top bantamweights, bro. Bryce Mitchell maybe can hang on to a 13, 14, 15 ranking spot in the division. I don't think he goes much higher than that. The bantamweight division is too stacked, it's too good. Bryce Mitchell's a great wrestler, good submission threat. I just think he's overrated, bro. He has nothing to offer on the feet. He's already been chinned a couple times. Bad. I'm going to say he's overrated. Moving on to Jiri Prochazka. This is a tough one as well, man. One of my favorite fighters. This is the last one to wrap it up. What do we think about Jiri Prochazka? Some people think he beats Magomed Ankalaev. Some people think he doesn't. I think he doesn't. Is he overrated or underrated? He's properly rated. Jiri Prochazka nowadays is properly rated. He was underrated. People were picking Jamahal Hill to beat him. I may or may not have done so, but following the Pereira losses, he was severely underrated. Then he goes up there, knocks out Jamahal Hill, which a win that has not aged well. And people are saying that he beats Magomed Ankalaev. I think he will beat Khalil Roundtree. I think he gives Magomed Ankalaev problems. I don't think he gives him enough problems to win the fight. I'm going to say Jiri Prochazka is properly rated, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and hit the like button down below. Comment something for the algorithm. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with. Let me know what type of videos y'all want to see next, man. Turn the post notifications on so you don't miss a live stream. But that's going to be it for me, guys. And we out.